All right, how's everybody doing? Hotep, how's everybody doing today? All right, we're finally on. Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. It is Friday, May 17th, 2019. So hope everybody's doing well. Okay, share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. So I saw this story from Huffington Post, Black Voices, and then also News1.com has a story dealing with this. And on Roland Martin's daily digital show, Roland Martin Unfiltered, he talked about this on May 16th, 2019. So this deals with a high school in Texas. And they have an annual Spirit Week, okay? And this year, and it's happened in previous years as well, but the juniors had a day that they called Thug Day. It was supposed to be Jersey Day, where they get to wear jerseys, but some of the juniors, not all of them, but 30 of them participated in what they call Thug Day. And they wore cornrows, they wore fake tattoos, jerseys, gold chains, and imitated hip hop artists, rappers, etc. Okay, but they called it Thug Day. Okay, so we're going to talk about this because this has wide-ranging has a wide-ranging impact, and it also impacts the way African American men specifically are portrayed in the media, which in turn impacts the way that African American men are treated by law enforcement. Okay, so this has a wide-ranging impact, and I'm going to share some studies with you that document what I'm talking about also. All right, so everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page, and African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. Okay, you can also donate to the African History Network if you like this type of information. PayPal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, africanhistorynetwork.com. All right, and we have Robin Lynn, Gloria, Bo, Kelly, just a few of the people watching us. We have people watching from across the country. All right, so let's jump into this, and let me share this broadcast also. Okay, so let's jump into this. Let's look at the article from Huffington Post, Black Voices. Okay. So the article from Huffington Post, Black Voices, is called "White Students Wore Cornrows and Bandanas as Costumes for High School Thug Day." Okay, white students wear cornrows and bandanas for high school as costumes for High School Thug Day. Now, I don't understand why they didn't go dressed up as Donald Trump. Because to me, Donald Trump is one of the biggest thugs there is, and he is constantly violating his oath of office. He is engaging in obstruction of justice. He's engaging in all types of illegal activities. So to me, they should have gone dressed as Donald Trump. Okay, but so let's look at this. And this is from May 17th, 2019. So the outfits sparked controversy online, with many people criticizing the students for appropriating and mocking Black culture or African American culture. All right. Okay, and I just want to monitor the audio also on this as well. All right, good. All right, so around 30 students at the Memorial High School in Houston, Texas, Memorial High School in Houston, Texas. About 30 white students sported cornrows, baggy sports jerseys, and gold chains on Tuesday for what many students call Thug Day. Now, the day is part of the school's annual Spirit Week, which is created by the school to celebrate rising seniors, okay? The theme of the day was Jersey Day, but many students called it Thug Day, and this was stated by current Memorial High School senior Rachel Goodwin, and she told this to the Huffington Post. Now, Rachel Goodwin tweeted several photos of her classmates wearing sweatbands and fake tattoos that read swag with the S as a dollar sign, swag, okay, for Spirit Week, okay, quote unquote swag, and they did this for Spirit Week, and her tweet quickly went viral. Other photos show white female students dressed in baggy pants, sporting fake face tattoos and handcuffs. Now, as of Friday morning, Friday, May 17, 2019, the images had received over 16,000 retweets. So the outfit sparked controversy online, with many criticizing the students for appropriating and mocking Black culture or African American culture. So some of the social media posts said, one on Twitter said that Black people with this hair or hair like this are denied jobs, internships, and get harassed at their schools. Here, Memorial High School students are using it as a costume, one person on Twitter wrote, and they said it's rude, it's racist. So we've all seen stories of especially African-American women fired from their jobs for having natural hair or criticized for having natural hairstyles, okay? Now, we know a couple of years ago, the U.S. Army ruled that women especially could have natural hairstyles and braids and things like this. But we've seen stories about this. So I'm going to show you some of their pictures here in just a minute also. Now, Jersey Day has been used as an quote-unquote undercover thug day for years. Rachel Goodwin, who was a student at Memorial High School, she said this to the Huffington Post, quote, "The faculty have never changed it or disciplined the students wearing the things that offended many students," she said. Now, Memorial High School administrators responded to the controversy by canceling the rest of Spirit Week. Administrators also sent a letter to parents writing that, quote, "any instance of inappropriate or offensive dress violation will not be tolerated," end quote, according to the local news outlet KHOU Channel 11. KHOU Channel 11. But this is not the first time that this has happened. This has happened in previous years. So why didn't they send a letter out? Why didn't they put this statement out prior to Spirit Week 2019? Okay, so administrators, ABC Channel 13 also, in their article, they posted this statement from the administrators at Memorial High School. The statement says, "On Tuesday, some rising juniors wore inappropriate dress and body hair decorations, body/hair decorations, as part of an alternative, unapproved response to the theme day." The theme day was Jersey Day. Now, as a shared expectation about the theme, was clearly violated, Memorial High School has canceled all remaining dress theme days for the remainder of this week. While the majority of rising juniors followed the approved dress theme on Tuesday, any instance of an inappropriate or inoffensive dress violation will not be tolerated. Students found to be in violation of the student code of conduct and dress code will be given a consequence. Now, Memorial High School Memorial High School is focused today on preparing all students for finals and ending the school year well. Okay, so this is their official statement. Now, Huffington Post spoke with 7 current and former students, including Rachel Goodwin, who said that racism and bigotry are rampant at Memorial High School. Now, Ava Lahajani, okay, Lahijani, Lahajani, I guess it's pronounced, is an Iranian Memorial High School student. And she said that racism is pervasive at the school, but is, quote, swept under the rug, end quote, all too often. Now, Laura Fields is a junior at Memorial High School. And she said that, quote, as a Black student, I am already not represented well at my school. To see these events happen on Tuesday deeply offended and saddened me. I could not grasp how the staff could let this happen again after years of the same thing, end quote. So this is not the first year something like this has happened. Now, once again, there were approximately 30 students who did this. Now, it wasn't the entire student body, so I don't want to give the impression that it was the entire student body who did this. However, that was 30 too many. And since it's happened in previous years, students know it happened in previous years. Why didn't the administration put this notice out prior to Spirit Week to let them know this is not going to be tolerated, okay? So let's look at some of the pictures, because I'm going to share some of the studies with you, right? Because in December of 2018, a study came out. AtlantaBlackStar.com had an article about this. I didn't have time then to get into this. We were dealing with Kwanzaa and everything. I didn't have time to get into this. But Rutgers University did a study that suggests that the media's negative portrayals of African-American men contribute to police violence. The media's negative portrayals of African-American men contribute to police violence. So when we see, and then also, AtlantaBlackStar.com had a article from March 10th, 2018. I talked about it briefly on my Sunday night show, the African History Network show. And we're going to get into this on my Sunday night show, Sunday, May 19th. We'll get into that then. And that's also Malcolm X's birthday as well, May 19th. Tall, dark, and dangerous. Tall, dark, and dangerous. Study finds tall Black men are in more danger of biased policing. Study finds tall Black men in more danger of biased policing. So you don't want to miss Sunday night show, Sunday, May 19th, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network show on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation. And in Detroit, and we broadcast on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network as well. And we put this on our YouTube channel also. Okay, so let's look at this here. I think the screen share is on. How's everybody doing? We've got Robert, we have Oso Davis, we have Jay, we have Tracy, Kimberly, Jasmine, Nichelle, just a few of the people watching. All right, so white students wear cornrows and bandanas as costumes for high school thug day. This is from Huffington Post Black Voices. So here's some of the pictures. They have their faces pixelated to obscure their identity. And if they are minors, I can understand that, okay? So let's analyze some of this, right? Now, if you watch Roland Martin's daily digital show, Roland Martin Unfiltered, okay? If you watch that, you know, we share the broadcast here on our Facebook page, also the African History Network. If you are familiar with Dr. Cleo Monago, and you see Dr. Cleo Monago, who's a friend of mine, and we're in a documentary together, Resurrecting Black Wall Street, the Blueprint, from Dr. Boyce Watkins and Your Black World Films. It's directed by Dorian Chandler. But Dr. Cleo Monago talks about how many white people really want to be us. Many white people really want to be us, okay? And I put it on the wrong thing. Let's see. Let's go back over to the article. There we go. He talks about how many white people really want to be us, okay? They want to be Black. They want to act Black. They want to listen to our music. They want to, now what they're doing is they are taking the accoutrements, or it's cultural appropriation. They are looking at the caricatures of African Americans, of African American men, especially. They're looking at the caricatures, the distorted images that are projected through negative corporate controlled hip hop, through the media, through movies, and this is what becomes emulated. And I always talk about how whatever is disseminated becomes imitated. Whatever is disseminated becomes imitated. So you see one with the shirt that says "Too Legit." I don't know if that's a reference to Hammer, MC Hammer, "Too Legit to Quit." So you see them wearing jerseys, gold chains, cornrows, things like this in this picture here. And I saw a lot. Now I've seen pictures. Now news1.com, they have the actual tweets that show the pictures and their faces not pixelated. So it's a lot of white girls doing this also. And I guarantee you, a lot of these white girls want to be with black men if they don't already have black boyfriends. A lot of these white girls want to be with black men, I guarantee you. So here's another picture: cornrows, tattoos, fake tattoos, things like this, gold chains, and they're depicting these images that they see projected in hip hop videos. This is what's taking place. Now, African Americans will get harassed. African Americans are denied jobs when they have cornrows. They suffer from implicit bias, racial profiling when you dress like this. Okay, they're putting up possible gang signs, things like so. This is take place at a high school. Now, why did they call it Thug Day? See, this has wide-ranging negative implications. What happens when they go through college and go out into the real world, and whatever convinced them that this was appropriate, this was acceptable? What happens when that type of behavior is not corrected? And why would you and why would you name it Thug Day? Why did you call it Hip Hop Day? Why would you associate something like this with being a thug, and why would you think that it's permissible in school? I said, why didn't they dress as Donald Trump and call and why didn't they all dress as Donald Trump and call that Thug Day? Because that's a real thug right there. He's in defiance of lawful subpoenas. Mueller laid out at least 10 instances of possible obstruction of justice in the Mueller report. Okay, so we have this, and you have one wearing handcuffs. Okay, now Attorney General William Barr just asked, let's take the screen share off. Attorney General William Barr just asked Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi at an event. Okay, at an event recently, he just asked her, did you bring your handcuffs? Now, to me, he looks like a guy who would like to be handcuffed by women, number one. Two, she said the sergeant of arms is right there. You know, if anybody needs to be arrested, the sergeant of arms would do it. But here you have a lawless administration in clear defiance of the U.S. Constitution, in defiance of Section 6103 of the IRS tax code, which gives the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee authorization to request and receive tax returns of any American citizen, including the President of the United States, because no man is above the law. Here you have an administration in clear violation of the Constitution and violation of standing law, all of this. So they should have gone dressed as Donald Trump. Okay, so let's look at another one here. Who we have? We have Sherry, we have Jackie, Kimberly, a few of the people watching. Let's look, do we have any more pictures? Okay, so we have those pictures. All right, so let's go back to this article. And if you all like this type of information, also you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. That helps us keep doing the research, finance the Sunday night show, the African History Network show, stay on the air, pay the bills, etc. paypal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, africanhistorynetwork.com, africanhistorynetwork.com, okay? And that helps us pay for the services that we use to be able to do all this also. All right, and then all of my DVD lectures are at our website also, africanhistorynetwork.com. All right, let's continue here. An African-American business owner is posting the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. All right, so let's continue here. Okay, so the Huffington Post spoke with current and former students, including Rachel Goodwin, who said that racism and bigotry are rampant at Memorial High School, okay? And Memorial High School is located, it's in Houston, Texas, all right? Okay, and Rachel Goodwin said that racism and bigotry are rampant at Memorial High School. Ava Lahajani, an Iranian Memorial High School student, said that racism is pervasive at the school, but is swept underneath the rug all too often, okay? Now, Laura Fields, who's an African-American student, who's a junior at the school, said, quote, "As a Black student, I am already not represented well at my school. To see these events happen on Tuesday deeply offended and saddened me. I could not grasp how the staff could let this happen again after years of the same thing," end quote. Now, Laura Fields said that this type of behavior is, quote unquote, nothing new for Memorial High School. Her sister graduated 4 years ago from the high school, and quote unquote Thug Day was happening then as well. All right, now Monica Day, who is a 2016 graduate of Memorial High School, and Monica Day confirmed quote unquote Thug Day has been happening for years, just under a different name. Okay, she told the Huffington Post that when she was at Memorial High School in 2015, a few of the themed days for Spirit Week were Swag Day and Señorita's Day. Which Monica Day said devolved into some offensive costumes. She said on Señorita's Day, many students wore sombreros and mustaches, and one female student wore a Border Patrol outfit. Interesting. Okay, Border Patrol outfit. So I guess this is alluding to undocumented immigrants, right? Well, are they focusing on the undocumented immigrants that come through the Canadian border, or are those all right because they're mainly white undocumented immigrants? I mean, this is, you know, and then when you talk about undocumented immigrants, what I find interesting is Donald Trump demonizes undocumented immigrants, but when you look at the studies, they commit crimes at a lower rate than people born in this country. One, two, he has no problem exploiting the labor of undocumented immigrants at his golf courses in New Jersey and New York until he gets caught. He has no problem exploiting their labor. So I just find it interesting he demonizes them. Then if you talk about immigrants in general, right, we know that African immigrants have the highest level of education. African immigrants that immigrate to the U.S. have the highest level of education. There have been studies that document this also, especially those coming from Nigeria. Yet Donald Trump wants to refer to immigrants coming from African nations as S-hole countries. So when you actually, if you actually do the research on these statements being made, you find out most of this stuff is false that Trump is pushing. Okay, so now Catherine King, who's a current senior and co-editor of Memorial High School's student magazine called The Anvil, Catherine King told Huffington Post that the students who dressed up for quote unquote Thug Day, quote, cannot blame ignorance, end quote. They cannot blame ignorance because the magazine just ran a cover story about cultural appropriation in its March 2019 issue. Well, maybe the students can't read, or maybe they didn't read it, I don't know. But I'm sure people were talking about it or something like that. But maybe some of these students are functionally illiterate, you know. Now, my thing is, when they left home Tuesday morning, what did their parents say about this? About how they were dressed? Or did they just come out, you know, did they do, you know, leave out the house wearing regular clothes and then change clothes in the school bathroom? I don't know. But now that they have been exposed, I wonder what their parents are saying about this. Now, during her freshman year at Memorial High School in 2016, Gabby Hamlin, Hamlin, said someone graffitied a wall at the high school with racial slurs and anti-Semitic insults. She added that she's received death threats since speaking out against the Spirit Week theme. Okay, she's received death threats. Now, I don't know if those death threats were investigated. I don't know if a police report was filed or what have you. I would be interested to find out what was the school's response to these death threats. Okay, now, Gabby Hamlin is an African-American student, and she said, quote, "These last few days, I've been full of necessary rage against people who invalidate people like me." She said, "These last few days, I have been full of necessary rage against people who invalidate people like me. Playing with a defined stereotype that hurts Black and other minority communities is not appropriate for a high school spirit day," end quote. Now, when reached for comment, Memorial High School directed Huffington Post to speak with Spring Branch Independent School District administrators. The Spring Branch Independent School District administrators did not immediately respond to the Huffington Post. So it's going to be interesting to see what their response is, because this has been going on year after year after year. So why didn't you put the notice out prior to Spirit Week that this would not be tolerated, when this is not the first time Thug Day has happened? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to juxtapose this to some other current stories, right? Let's look at this, okay? How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. How's everybody doing today? So we have Cynthia, we have Jay, Felice, Kimberly, Stephen, just a few of the people watching. Sherry, Oso, Robin Land, okay? Just a few of the people watching. All right, and then African-American business owners posting name your business here in the thread of the broadcast, and we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. We have a current promotion going on for a few more days. Current promotion, get 3 months for the price of one. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We have a couple new advertisers, the Fast Life 28-Day Challenge, TFL28.com, TFL28.com. They can help you lose weight in inches, increase energy, improve blood sugars and blood pressure readings, conquer food addiction and cravings. They have a special 28-day challenge of a structured fasting regimen, healthy habits, and 3 coaches holding you accountable on a daily basis as well. Here's your chance to move from imagination to realization. This is an online coaching program. They have a special Facebook group for this also, and this is to help members tap into their body's natural ability to repair itself via fasting. Okay, so visit their website, TFL28.com, for more information. They have a new class starting up, a new cohort starting up soon. All right, now let's look at a story that just came out today. Right now, this is involving Eric Garner. Now I'm gonna put all this together. We're going to put the studies together along with this, along with why the history of African Americans has to be taught in every school across the country. And people need to look at the study, Teaching Hard History American Slavery, Teaching Hard History American Slavery. This is a 52-page study from the Southern Poverty Law Center that documents how the history of slavery is being incorrectly taught in schools across the country, not just African-American schools, but in schools all across the country. Then if we look at, that's from the Southern Poverty Law Center, go to splcenter.org, splcenter.org, and you can download that, okay? It's a free study. I took it to the printer, got it printed up. So when I teach dealing with African history, African-American history, this is one of the tools. If we look at an article from Box.com, from April 19, 2019. Schools keep teaching slavery and civil rights history in ways that traumatize Black students. Schools keep teaching slavery and civil rights history in ways that traumatize Black students, okay? Now, you only protect what you respect, okay? You only protect what you respect. Now, which link is it, Jay, that you want me to give again? SPLcenter.org. I posted that one. That's to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Let me know which link it is, Jay Marie, you need me to post again. You only protect what you respect. So when you have people doing this cultural appropriation, depicting these stereotypes of African Americans as being thugs, it's because that falls in line with what they have been taught about African Americans. They have not been taught the proper history in the schools. This is why the history of African Americans needs to be taught in every school across the country. That's not just me saying that. That's what Dr. Carter G. Woodson said. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, co-founder of the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, September 9th, 1915, which became today known as the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And he also created Negro History Week in 1926, which in 1976 became Black History Month, which today is African American History Month. Dr. Carter G. Woodson was an educator. He taught at Howard University. He taught at Frederick Douglass High School in Washington, D.C. He was the first African-American, he was the second African-American to graduate with a PhD from Harvard, the first of African slave descent. He graduated with a PhD in American history. He was a historian. He was an educator. And he understood that much of the racism, much of the bigotry and prejudice that we suffer from is because of lies being told about us, because of stereotypes projected through the media, and people believe these, internalize these, and replicate them, okay? And so he felt that the history of African Americans need to be taught in every school across the country. So when you have that history that's not taught, when you have the history of slavery incorrectly being taught in our schools, okay? So then what this does is this reinforces negative stereotypes that people see in the media, and they reproduce them. They look at corporate control, negative corporate control hip hop. They see these images being projected. They think these images are cool. They want to emulate them, okay? But these images are very damaging. These images are very detrimental. This is why we need to shut down negative corporate control hip hop, all right? So if we look at this article from May, this article came out today, May 17th, 2019. NYPD supervisor sent text message saying Eric Garner's death was, quote, not a big deal. Eric Garner's death was, quote, not a big deal, all right? So this was, we'll post a link here for this because most people haven't even heard this information yet. Hold on, let me grab this again. This is from NBCnews.com. Let's post a link here. So this dealt with the disciplinary hearing for Officer Daniel Pantaleo, I should say, that's taking place right now, dealing with the death of Eric Garner, the choking death of Eric Garner. So if we look at the article, a New York Police Department supervisor called the death of Eric Garner, killed during an arrest for selling loose cigarettes, quote, not a big deal, end quote, according to testimony at the departmental trial of the officer who applied a deadly chokehold. After Officer Daniel Pantaleo choked Eric Garner from behind before three officers tackled him, Sergeant Samanath, S-A-M-I-N-A-T-H, told Lieutenant Christopher Brannon in a text message that Eric Garner was, quote, most likely DOA. He has no pulse, end quote, according to evidence presented Thursday. The Staten Island Advance and New York Times both reported. That's when Lieutenant Christopher Brannon responded, quote, not a big deal. We were effecting a lawful arrest, end quote. So you have a black man that just died. He's choked to death, but you don't think it's a big deal. You're effecting a lawful arrest. Keep in mind, no Lucy cigarettes were found either. Okay, so so this was reported by both newspapers. Not a big deal. We were effecting a lawful arrest. When the text message was read out aloud, gasps and cries could be heard from the courtroom audience, the newspapers reported, okay? So when you have, we have to understand, when you have tens of thousands of images of African Americans projected as criminals, projected as being savage, projected as being beasts, then what happens is people start to form a consensus about a targeted group of people. And they start acting in a certain manner towards this targeted group of people, which falls in line with the programming. So the laws they implement, the tough on crime, the stop and frisk laws they implement, the people they elect in office fall in line with the way that they have been programmed. Okay? So the callousness that you see from the tweet or the text message from Lieutenant Christopher Brannon after an African American man just died. And also, when you go watch the video of Eric Garner, it's hard to watch, right? He says 11 times, "I can't breathe." But they look at him as being so savage that he is not given he's not given basic human rights. He's not treated like a human being. He's not given basic humanity after he told you 11 times he can't breathe. Then if you actually watch the full video, he's not given any first aid by any other officer standing around talking. He's not given any first aid until EMS arrives. They're just standing around talking. He's laying there dying, and they don't have any concern for his well-being. And they're being paid by taxpayer dollars. Keep that in mind. They're being paid by taxpayer dollars also. All right. Let's continue here. Okay, so you have that is taking place right now with Eric Garner. Okay. Then if we look at this, let's go to there's another article here from a local news affiliate, ABC Channel 13. This is an article I read also. ABC Channel 13. District cancels Spirit Week after unapproved Thug Day. District cancels Spirit Week after unapproved Thug Day. The website that somebody was asking about also for the Fast Life 28-day challenge is TFL28, the number 28. T, it stands for The Fast Life. TFL28.com. Okay, visit their website. We posted the link here also. All right, now this is from May 15, 2019. Spring Branch Independent School District and Memorial High School have canceled the rest of the theme Spirit Week after some students took it too far. Some students without approval morphed the so-called Jersey Day, on which students wear athletic jerseys, into what some call quote-unquote Thug Day. The district said their hairstyles, clothing, and accessories violated school policy. All right, now it was, let me see. All right, that's not the article I was looking for. It was one of the articles that had some more information in it. Here's one, KHOU Channel 11. This was referenced in the article. This is one that was referenced in the article also. This one from ABC Channel 13 was referenced also in the article from Huffington Post Black Voices as well. Okay, we spoke. All right, Tuesday. Okay, so while a majority of rising juniors followed the approved dress theme on Tuesday, okay, that was their statement. And let me see, hold on just a second here. I was trying to avoid having to print up all this stuff. There was one from the Houston Chronicle. that I was looking at. Okay, now if we look at the one from news1.com, when you look at some of the reactions from people on social media, one person said, look, I think it was an overreaction by people, said Todd Forbes, F-O-B-R-E-S, who graduated from Memorial High School in the early 1980s. He told the Houston Chronicle, I think it might have been inappropriate, but the school overreacted too. And if that's racist, then I must be missing something. See, what's interesting, I don't think it's overreacting for the school to discipline them and counsel the rest of the week, because they're saying that because they may be worried about what they're going to do the next day. Okay. However, when you have people that say, oh, it's overreacting, that's usually because they're not the target of the offense. See, they're not the target of the offense. So it's easy to say, oh, they were overreacting. Okay, now Heavy.com had an article about this. They reported that this was not the first time students used the Jersey-themed day for its so-called Thug Day. Timestamp pictures go back to at least 2015, showing the same thing. Former students have also noted that past themes of Swag Day and Señoritas Day also caused tension at the school. All right, now. While the community being aware of apparent racism at the high school, even before this incident, with the community being aware of apparent racism at the high school even before this incident, the Houston chapter of the NAACP has called on the school to do more than just release a statement. Okay, this is what I was looking for. Now, the Houston chapter of the NAACP, the president's name is James Douglas. James Douglas said, quote, they need to do more than make a statement. They need to have some training programs for these students to make them understand what it is like to live in a racial society, and why what they did was harmful to other people, end quote. Now, I would be interested to find out at Memorial High School, what type of history do they teach about African Americans? I'll be interested to find that out. What type of history do they teach about African Americans? Because when you study the history of a group of people, it causes you to have a basic respect for those people. This is why, now I guarantee you they would not have done that imitating Jews during the Holocaust, because there's a basic level of respect. Even though anti-Semitism exists, there's a basic level of respect. Okay. All right. So news1.com has this article. Thug Day at Houston High School has been going on for years, students say. Thug Day at Houston High School has been going on for years. So with this being the case, since it's been going on for years, what I don't understand, and the school should be held accountable for this, the statement that you sent out after they wore the jerseys and the cornrows, why didn't you send that out prior to Spirit Week? Because you knew this has happened before. The Houston Chronicle has an article, the website chron.com, chron.com. Houston community reacts to controversial Thug Day fallout at Memorial High School. I'm trying to see if there's anything additional in here. Okay. Okay, so they cited James Douglas of the Houston chapter of the NAACP. He condemned the students' attire. Now, Robert Boyd, a Memorial High School graduate, commented on a private Facebook group. He said, if you can't see how Thug Day is obviously racist, you might be from Memorial High School, okay? And he's from the class of 1981. Now, James Douglas, president of the NAACP Houston chapter, said, He went on to say, so, he talked about how they need to do more than make a statement. But he also said, if the adults are not going to be responsible for teaching them, the students, we're going to continue to have these kinds of problems. Now, Mike Jackson is a UFC fighter and a self-described media personality in Houston who is African-American and believes the students were mocking a segment of Black culture. Based on the viral photos, he felt the students were simply making a joke by adding cornrows, large chains, fake tattoos, and baggy pants. It was more than just a joke. Okay, you're projecting stereotypes. It's more than just a joke. He said they associate Black culture as a whole with thug culture. Okay, Mike Jackson said, referring to the Thug Day moniker. They have this negative idea in their head associating thugs with jerseys just to add to the costume they were trying to make, end quote. Now, another Houston resident, Rob Gallatte, Gullatte, who was also African-American, said he was not personally offended by the photos, but he understands why people say that they are insensitive. He said, I would be more offended by the school allowing something like that to, he said, I would be more offended by the school allowing something like that to go on. And he lives in the Meyerland area, Meyerland. He said, the reality of it is, where these images are coming from. They're not coming from the perception of white thugs, okay? All right, now the Houston Chronicle sent several requests for comments to the Parent-Teacher Association at Memorial High School, but did not receive a response. So it's going to be interesting to see what the response is going to be from the Parent-Teacher Association at Memorial High School and from administrators in that school district. It's going to be interesting to see what this response is, all right? So let's look at some of the, and we'll post this article here also from the Houston Chronicle. Let's post this link as well. Okay, we've got John Ray. How you doing, John Ray? J. Marie, Black history is not being taught correctly in school. But Michael, you know that, well, I deal with that. I deal with how it's not being taught and how it can be more correctly taught. That's one of the things that this study here documents. Is a 52-page study from the Southern Poverty Law Center. You have historians that were on the board, that the committee that put this together. Is called Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. You can go to splcenter.org and download it. You can use this in your children's schools. Take this to the teachers. Take this to the parent-teacher conference. Take this to the school board meetings, because a lot of the teachers, a lot of the administrators have not read this study. One of the things that it does is it tells you that during the mock slave auctions and reenactments of slavery and things like this, it tells you do not do that. And it talks about how that traumatizes students, especially African-American students, okay? So splcenter.org, search for it there, and we'll post the actual link to the study, Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. Okay, here's the link right here. This is to the actual PDF of the actual study. So you can download this. All right, so let's look at some of these studies here. All right, so Rutgers University did a study, came out December 2018. And I saw this article from AtlantaBlackStar.com, December 30th, 2018. But I mean, I was so busy I didn't have time to. I think I talked about it briefly on one of my shows. I didn't have time to do a broadcast about it. Rutgers study suggests media's negative portrayals of Black men contribute to police violence. Media's negative portrayals of Black men contribute to police violence. Okay, I'm gonna deal with probably maybe about 4 studies here that I've pulled out. Okay, so this article, this is from December 30th, 2018. And this article says negative stereotypes and portrayals in the news media could be influencing how police treat African-American men, a Rutgers School of Public Health study suggests. Now, the report published in the book, Research in Race and Ethnic Relations, Research in Race and Ethnic Relations, in late November 2018, examines how public perceptions of the danger posed by Black men are contributing factors in how officers respond with excessive and or lethal force, according to phys.org, 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 and that they have the study on their website also. Now the study, so let me repeat that, the report published in the book Research in Race and Ethnic Relations in late November 2018 examines how public perceptions of the danger posed by Black men are contributing factors in how officers respond with excessive and or lethal force. Now, the study also noted how Black masculinity is often equated with criminality, machismo, and hypersexuality. The study also noted how Black masculinity is often equated with criminality, machismo, and hypersexuality. So this all deals with stereotypes projected through the media, handed down generation after generation. A lot of this coming out of slavery. And when you look, for instance, if you look at the movie The Birth of a Nation, which came out, debuted February 8, 1915. In the movie The Birth of a Nation, it depicted all the negative stereotypical images of African Americans, African American men. It takes place during slavery, Civil War, and post-Civil War called Reconstruction, okay? And all the negative stereotypes of African Americans, the fear of African American men as the Black brutes and things like this was all depicted in the movie, okay? There's another article I want to pull up. There was one from, what was that? What are tomorrow's police learning in school today? And this was from, yeah, something like that. This is from newrepublic.com, newrepublic.com, September 28, 2014. What are the children who grew up to become police officers learning in school? What are the children who grow up to become police officers learning in school? What this article talks about is how in the Philadelphia school system it's mandatory that students take African American history classes. And they're talking about the impact this will have in the future on policing, okay? This is what this article talks about. This is from the newrepublic.com, newrepublic.com. All right, we'll talk about that one also. Let's go back to the one from dealing with Rutgers University. This study from Rutgers dealing with how media's negative portrayals of Black men contribute to police violence. Now, quote, unarmed Black Americans are 5 times more likely to be shot and killed by police than unarmed white Americans, said Professor Pamela Valera, who is the lead author of this study. She went on to say, quote, we believe that media may play a significant role in these disproportionate deaths. Now, if you've seen any of my broadcasts in the past, you know I've been studying media for 27 years. My degree's in business administration with a major in marketing from Wayne State University. Marketing deals with the media, foundation of marketing and psychology. So I've been studying media for 27 years. I've done numerous lectures dealing with the effect of the media. One of my early lectures was a lecture series called The Media's Deliberate Destruction of the African American Family. Okay, and I've also done a 4-hour presentation called Empire Strikes Black. Empire Strikes Black, the propaganda of the media, dealing with the TV show Empire and dealing with a history. In that lecture, I deal with a history of negative stereotypical images of African Americans and how they are projected by the media, and the harmful effects of that. And I also deal with the TV show Empire, because that is a very degenerative, degrading show to African Americans. Show a lot of negative stereotypical images of drug use, promiscuity. They use music to hook you, to keep showing you these negative images week after week after week, okay? And I just saw that the upcoming season is going to be the last season, thank God. Now, keep in mind, this show is on the Fox TV network, owned by Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch also owns the Fox News network that has Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, Fox and Friends, and they constantly daily attack African Americans as well. Now, Professor Pamela Valera, the lead author of this study, went on to say, quote, "The stereotypes held, consciously or unconsciously, about the criminality and dangerousness of Black men influence the rates at which they are stopped and engaged by the police. The stereotypes held, consciously or unconsciously, about the criminality and dangerousness of Black men influence the rates at which they are stopped and engaged by police," end quote. As part of their study, researchers reviewed 3 iconic newspapers' coverage of the fatal shooting of 18-year-old Michael Brown by white Ferguson, Missouri, former police officer Darren Wilson in 2014, okay? So as part of the study, the researchers reviewed 3 newspapers' coverage of this fatal shooting. Researchers chose the New York Times, Washington Post, and Los Angeles Times for their ability to impact public opinion, the report said, okay? And I read the Washington Post and New York Times every day. I have digital subscriptions to the Washington Post and New York Times, so I read them every day. I get their emails also. I get their breaking news alerts. I get their emails of the summary of the news of the day also. I get the email from the New York Times every morning about 4 a.m., okay, with the news articles from the previous day. Now, according to the Rutgers study, quote, "The research analyzed how the race, physicality, and masculinity of Michael Brown and Darren Wilson were presented in media coverage of Michael Brown's death and Darren Wilson's testimony. The researchers analyzed 40 articles from the 3 newspapers, okay, Washington Post, New York Times, and LA Times, taking into account which voices were given space in each article. On subsequent readings, a code book, C-O-D-E, a code book was developed containing codes that capture the masculinity, physicality, class, and race of Michael Brown and Darren Wilson. It concluded that negative race-based perceptions perpetuated by the media may have contributed to Michael Brown's death. This study concluded that negative race-based perceptions perpetuated by the media may have contributed to Michael Brown's death. Now, researchers also paid particular attention to how the newspapers used Officer Darren Wilson's account of the shooting to describe Michael Brown, as well as the verbiage used to depict Michael Brown and Darren Wilson's socioeconomic status. For instance, one account citing Officer Darren Wilson painted the Black teenager Michael Brown as a quote-unquote monster, and noted how the officer compared himself holding on to Michael Brown's arms he compared that to a 5-year-old trying to hold on to Hulk Hogan, end quote. Now, both these guys were about the same height. Michael Brown was heavier, but both these guys were about the same height. Yet, and still, now see, this ties into long-held stereotypes of African-American men, the physicality, the brute strength of them, okay? And how dangerous they are. This goes back to when you study the history of drugs in this country and drug laws. Drug laws were changed based when non-white people started using these drugs. When you look at cocaine, cocaine used to be legal in this country, but there was a fear about the brute strength of black men when they were high on cocaine, and what would they do to white women when they were high on cocaine. There was an article from the New York Times from February 8th, 1914, exactly 1 year before the movie The Birth of a Nation came out, okay? There was an article from the New York Times called dealing with Negro cocaine fiends, okay? The actual, I'll pull it up. And this, and doing research on this topic, led me to this article, which led me to get a digital subscription to the New York Times. I have to pay them $15 each month because this article was in their archives, and I had to get access to their archives. So I had to get a digital subscription to get access to their archives to read the article. Is this coming up? What? Content. Let me try to pull this up. This side, we have lost this page. Okay, so you can try to Google this topic here. In the nation.com also had an article that dealt with this previous article from the New York Times, okay? But the article from the New York Times is called Negro Cocaine Fiends Are a New Southern Menace. Murder and insanity increasing among lower class blacks because they have taken to sniffing since deprived of whiskey by prohibition. This is during prohibition, and this deals with the fear of black men. They were talking about, do police now have to carry a .45 caliber handgun to kill a Negro high on cocaine because a .38 caliber handgun is not powerful enough to kill a Negro high on cocaine? These were real discussions taking place at this time. This is what this article talks about. Okay, I'm trying to see if we can bring this up. We have the one from thenation.com, which is about this 100-plus-year-old article from New York Times. The one from thenation.com is called How the Myth of the Negro Cocaine Fiend Helped Shape American Drug Policy. How the myth of the Negro cocaine fiend helped shape American drug policy. So what this deals with, going back to the beginning of this discussion, is how dangerous these negative stereotypical images of African Americans are, because policy is shaped based upon these images. Policy laws are shaped based upon the way people feel about a certain targeted group of people, okay? And this has real life consequences. This deals with policing. And if we look at the difference between the Obama administration and the Trump administration, this is why Trump must be voted out of office if he's not impeached and removed from office or does not resign. Trump has got to go, period. There was going to be, towards the end of the Obama administration, they announced that there was going to be implicit bias training for federal authorities. Federal is about 33,000, something like this, federal officers. There was going to be implicit bias training. Under Trump, you've heard very little, if anything, about implicit bias training. During the 2016 campaign, newsone.com has an article about this. Then Governor Mike Pence, who was governor of Indiana, okay, then Governor Mike Pence talked about how he was on the campaign trail, and he said he and Donald Trump felt that there was too much talk about implicit bias in policing, and they felt that they needed to stop talking about implicit bias. Not do anything about implicit bias in policing, not do anything about it, not put policies in place, not mandate better training, but just stop talking about it. So I guess if he thinks that we stop talking about it, it'll go away. Okay, we have Kimberly, Nati, Janine, just a few of the people watching, okay? Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. If you like this type of information, you can also donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. Okay, that helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, broadcast a Sunday night show. You can set up for a recurring donation also if you like. You donate 10, 15, 25, 50, $100, what have you. That definitely helps. Also, if you don't have a PayPal account, you can go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button there at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast, and we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Email us at customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and we'll let you know how you can advertise with this. Current promotion is get 3 months for the price of 1. Nati said, wake up, Trump will never be impeached and he will be in for a second term. Stay woke. What makes you think he'll get a second term? Hillary Clinton got 2.8 million more popular votes than he did. 1, 2, more people understand what happens when you don't vote. 3, there'll be 12 million 18-year-olds voting in 2020. Half of them are non-white, okay? 4, you're going to have more African Americans registered to vote in 2020 than you had in 2016. There were 16.4 million African Americans registered to vote in 2016, and people know about the Russian hacking, the Russian intervention. More African Americans see what happens when you don't vote. You're going to have a continuation of what happened in the 2018 midterm elections, when you had a massive number of people turn out to vote. It was a record number voting in midterm elections as well. Okay, so why would you just state something ridiculous like that? You can't claim to be woke and then say Trump is going to be reelected to the second term. Okay, you just giving away, you just bending over. No fight. No fight, no strategy, just acquiescing to a man who did not get a plurality of the votes, okay? Because he got about 63 million votes. He did not get a plurality of the votes, and he did not get a majority of the votes. This is what happens when you don't do research. You make stupid comments like this. So then you want to reference a fictitious book, 1984, An Animal Farm by George Orwell. I read both of them. What about them? That's fiction. We're talking about fact. We're talking about people who don't realize their power. In 2016, 16.4 million African Americans were registered to vote, but only 59.6% voted. There was rampant voter suppression that took place. Why? Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act was struck down because of Shelby County versus Holder Supreme Court decision of 2013. We don't understand law, and we don't understand politics. If your vote didn't matter, why did Republicans work so hard to suppress your vote? If the African American vote does not matter, why do Republicans work so hard to suppress their vote? Okay, so then you your argument is not with me. No, my argument is with you because you made this stupid ass comment. So my argument is with the people who post these stupid ass comments on social media. My argument is definitely with you when you post stuff like that. That is asinine. That is ridiculous. And not only that, is dangerous because people then repeat this nonsense. This is the same thing that the Russians did. Go watch the broadcast I just did. Dealing with the State of Black America 2019 report, okay, that documents the Russian hacking. Go read the Mueller report. I researched this stuff. I ain't just somebody on here just talking off the top of my head. I researched this stuff. Go read the Mueller report. I'll post a link to the one from the New York Times that's searchable. This is the one I ordered from the Washington Post. It's the full 448 pages with additional supporting documentation, okay? So if you don't want me to call your ass out when you post stupid ass nonsense like this on my thread when I'm broadcasting, don't post stupid ass nonsense like this. So now Nati wants to leave, okay? Yeah, see, if you don't start none, there won't be none. Don't come on here with this nonsense if you don't want me to call you up, because I will. All right, Okay, so let's continue. I'm a researcher. You got the wrong brother on the right day. I'm telling you right now, you got the wrong brother on the right day. So go read this article here from the okay, actually it finally came up. This is the one from the New York Times. This is from the archives. Negro cocaine fiends are a new Southern menace. Murder and insanity increasing among lower class blacks because they have taken to sniffing since deprived of whiskey by prohibition. Okay, so read this one here. This goes into understanding the history of drug laws. I've studied the history of drug laws in this country. Marijuana was made illegal in 1937 because Harry J. Anslinger, who was the first chairman of the National Narcotics Commission, testified in front of Congress, and he said that white women craved black men sexually when they were high on marijuana. And he talked about how the people who were using marijuana were largely jazz singers and Negroes and Filipinos and Mexicans, things like this. Marijuana was a Spanish term. When you had Mexicans immigrating to this country in 1900, they were vilified. There was a prejudice directed towards them. And the term marijuana was associated with cannabis or hemp. It used to be called hemp. Hemp was actually a crop that was grown in certain states. As long as white people were using cannabis or hemp, it was not a problem. They were using it to make different products. They were using it to make ropes, all different hemp to make ropes, all different types of things like this. What changed was who was using the drug. When African Americans are using the drug, when Mexicans are using the drug, now it becomes a problem. Same thing with cocaine. Same thing with opium. When white people were using opium, it was not a problem. The first anti-drug laws in this country go back to 1875 in California. I think it was San Francisco. It was the Anti-Opium Act. And it dealt with making opium illegal because of the fear of what Chinese workers who were working like on the railroads, working to build the railroads, what would these Chinese men do when they were high on opium? As long as white people were using opium, there was no problem. When you study the history of drug laws in this country, it wasn't the drug that was the problem. It was who was using it. Because white people have been using these drugs for years and there was no problem. Okay? So read that article and then read this one here from thenation.com, which came out 100 years later. This came out January 20th, 2014. This is called How the Myth of the Negro Cocaine Fiend Helped Shape American Drug Policy. How the myth of the Negro cocaine fiend helped shape American drug policy. Okay, this is from thenation.com. And it talks about, let's see here. Cocaine, in other words, made black men uniquely murderous and better marksmen, but that wasn't all. It also produced, quote, a resistance to the knockdown effects of fatal wounds. Bullets fired into vital parts that would drop a sane man in his tracks failed to check the fiend, end quote. They're citing the original article from the New York Times from February 8th, 1914, okay? So, and they talk about the Narcotics Tax Act. Around that time, Congress was debating whether to pass the Harrison Narcotics Tax Act, one of the country's first forays into national drug legislation. This unprecedented law sought to tax and regulate the production, importation, and distribution of opium and coca products. Coca, which you use to make cocaine. Proponents of the law saw it as a strategy to improve strained trade relations with China by demonstrating a commitment to controlling the opium trade. Opponents, mostly from southern states, viewed it as an intrusion into states' rights and had prevented passage of previous versions. By 1914, however, the law's proponents had found an important ally in their quest to get it passed. The mythical Negro cocaine fiend, which prominent newspapers, physicians, and politicians readily exploited. And just like they're exploiting undocumented immigrants, and Trump wants to always reference MS-13, but he doesn't tell you MS-13 did not start in Mexico. MS-13 started in Los Angeles, California in the 1980s. He doesn't want he doesn't want to talk about that undocumented immigrants create crimes at a much lower rate than natural-born citizens of the U.S. Okay, so just as these stereotypes are based in lies, Trump is doing the same thing. He's exploiting the fears. All this deals with the fear of the browning of America, because the fear is not of white undocumented immigrants coming to this country, coming through Canada. That's not the fear. The fear is not of white undocumented immigrants who overstay their visas, because about 60% of undocumented immigrants come to this country legally. They overstay their visas. They're not running across the southern border, even though that does happen. So his focus is not on the ones who overstay their visa. That's not the main focus. This all deals with the browning of America and the fear of some white people in this country that by the year 2043, white people will not be a majority population in this country anymore. This is what this all deals with. And when you look at why people voted for Trump, there have been numerous studies dealing with this. I've talked about this before. I do the research. I got all this. I have the evidence. I don't just come on here talking off the top of my head. I provide you with the links. I provide you with the sources. Proper documentation ends all conversation. I tell you, you don't have to believe a word that I say. Go do your own research. Research this stuff for yourself. You don't have to believe me. Okay? Now, here's the link to the article from thenation.com. Read this article. This is a history lesson here. Okay? The one from The Nation breaks this down. This is called How the Myth of the Negro Cocaine Fiend Helped Shape American Drug Policy. In 1914, a racist fiction helped sail one of the nation's first drug laws. 100 years later, it is still with us. Okay, so quickly here, if we look at this, I've got three, and there was one that I posted from the New York Times recently. Let's see if we can pull this up here, because I think there was, let's see, let's go here. Okay, it was cultural anxiety that drove white working class voters to Trump. It was cultural anxiety. This is from the Atlantic.com, May 9, 2017. A new study finds that fear of societal change, not economic pressure, motivated votes for the president among non-salaried workers without college degrees. It was cultural anxiety that drove white working class voters to Trump. It wasn't economic conditions. It was the fear of the browning of America. It was societal changes. It was cultural change. Okay, this is what the studies have documented. Study after study shows this. White Americans carried Donald Trump to the White House. He won college-educated white voters by a 4-point margin over Hillary Clinton, according to exit polls. But his real victory was among members of the white working class. Twice as many of these voters cast their ballots for Trump as for Hillary Clinton. This is why Vice President Joe Biden, he's talking directly to that white working class. He's talking directly to that white working class because he knows how to talk to them. And this is why Donald Trump is scared to death, because he knows Joe Biden can win. He knows Joe Biden can win. In the wake of Trump's surprise win, some journalists, scholars, and political strategists argued that economic anxiety drove these Americans to Trump. But new analysis of post-election survey data conducted by the Public Religion Research Institute and the Atlantic magazine found something different. Evidence suggests financially troubled voters in the white working class were more likely to prefer Hillary Clinton over Trump. Evidence suggests financially troubled voters in the white working class were more likely to prefer Clinton over Trump. Besides partisan affiliation, it was cultural anxiety, feeling like a stranger in America, supporting the deportation of immigrants, and hesitating about educational investment that best predicted support for Trump. If we look at the one from, this is from Vox.com. The past year of research has made it very clear. Trump won because of racial resentment. Trump won because of racial resentment. Now, this is from December 17th, 2017. Another study produces the same findings. We've seen it over and over again. Another study produces the same findings. We've seen it over and over again. More than a year after Donald Trump won the election, there are still some questions about what drove him to victory. Was it genuine anxiety about the state of the economy, or was it racism and racial resentment? Over at the Washington Post, researchers Matthew Fowler, Vladimir Medencia, and Kathy Cohen have published the results of a new survey on these questions, with a focus on the 41% of white millennials, 41% of white millennials who voted for Donald Trump, in the sense of white vulnerability that motivated them. The conclusion is very clear. Contrary to what some have suggested, white millennial Trump voters were not in more economically precarious situations than non-Trump voters. Fully 86% of them reported being employed, a rate similar to non-Trump voters, and they were 14% less likely to be low income than white non-voters who did not support Trump. Okay, they were 14% less likely to be low income than white voters who did not support Trump. Employment and income were not significantly related to that sense of white vulnerability. So what was it? It was racial resentment. This is what I said before. It was racial resentment. Now, a lot of these people have found out Trump is a con man. A lot of them found out Trump is a con man. And one of the biggest things to sell Trump as a successful businessman was a reality TV show called The Apprentice that he did not create. He did not own. That was Mark Burnett, okay, who created The Apprentice and owns The Apprentice. That's Mark Burnett. And Trump did not even create his signature line, "You're fired," even though he does not personally like to fire people. It's been revealed. Okay, so it was racial resentment. Even when controlling for partisanship, ideology, region, and a host of other factors, white millennials fit Michael Tesler's analysis explored here. As he put it, economic anxiety isn't driving racial resentment. Rather, racial resentment is driving economic anxiety. Economic anxiety is not driving racial resentment. Racial resentment is driving economic anxiety. We found, as he has in a larger population, that racial resentment is the biggest predictor of white vulnerability among white millennials. Economic variables like education, income, and employment made a negligible difference. Okay, so what's taking place here is that you have the fear among many white people, not all of them, you have the fear of the browning of America. You have the fear that by 2043, they will not be the majority population in this country. There's a fear of what's going to happen to them then. There's a fear. You have the browning of America. You have the demonization of Hispanics. You have Africans coming to this country, Africans coming from Haiti and Jamaica and things like this. And and Trump played on those fears. He played on them. He preyed on those fears, at the same time exploiting the labor of undocumented immigrants at his resorts, at his golf courses. He's doing it at the same time. He's playing both sides. This is what Trump is doing. Okay. Then we see the okay, so there's one from New York Times. We'll bring that up. There's another one from thenation.com, May 8th, 2017, thenation.com. Economic anxiety didn't make people vote Trump, racism did. Economic anxiety did not make people vote Trump, racism did, okay? So check that one out. And then we have one from New York Times, and this is from, okay, it's loading up. This is from April 24th, 2018, one of the most recent ones, April 24th, 2018. Trump voters driven by fear of losing status, not economic anxiety, study finds. Trump voters driven by fear of losing status, not economic anxiety, study finds, okay? Ever since Trump made his improbable political rise, many pundits have credited his appeal among white, Christian, and male voters to economic anxiety. How about unemployment and locked out of the recovery? Those voters turned out in force to send Donald Trump a message, to send Donald Trump and a message to Washington, or so the narrative goes. A study published on Monday in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences questions that explanation. The latest to suggest, and this is the latest to suggest that Trump voters weren't driven by anger over the past, but rather fear of what may come, okay? Hold on, let me just mute this because somebody's trying to send me a message while I'm broadcasting. I don't know why, but all right. Okay, so it was a fear over, not over the past, it's not anger over the past, but rather fear of what may come. White, Christian, and male voters, white, Christian, and male voters, the study suggests, turned to Donald Trump because they felt their status was at risk. Quote, it's much more of a symbolic threat that people feel, said Diana C. Mutz, M-U-T-Z, or Mutz, M-U-T-Z, the author of the study and a political science and communications professor at the University of Pennsylvania, where she directs the Institute for the Study of Citizens and Politics. She went on to say, quote, it's not a threat to their own economic well-being, it's a threat to their group's dominance in our country overall. So what did they do? They voted for white supremacy. That's what that boils down to. They voted for white supremacy. They say, oh, we know he cheated on his wives. We know he's immoral, all this stuff. And many of them voted, they said, this is about the Supreme Court. They said, this is about abortion right. This is about abolishing abortion. This is one of the reasons why the conservatives wanted to get Trump in office, to nominate conservative judges to the Supreme Court. They said this is about the federal courts also, but also this is about the browning of America. Many of them want to go back to Leave It to Beaver and Andy Griffith and Aunt B and Mayberry and Barney and Opie and all this stuff. And there's a fear that they're being overrun by non-white people. That's what this is about. And also, we look at studies from the U.S. Census Bureau that show how white people have a negative birth rate in 27 states out of 50. See, all this is coming together. In let me see, I have the studies here. So we see that this came out in 2018, and it showed that in 27 states, June of 2018, the U.S. Census press release, okay, and it showed that white people have a negative birth rate in 27 states out of 50. Now, 2 years before that, it was 17 states out of 50 that white people have a negative birth rate. And one of the things that it attributes the increase to is the opioid addiction. So let's look at this. New York Times, June 20th, 2018. See, I have all these articles. I have thousands of articles. Okay, I do research. I'm a researcher. This is what I do. Not just a historian, I'm a researcher. June 20th, 2018, fewer births than deaths among whites in majority of U.S. states. Now, a lot of people didn't see this. I reported on this when it happened on my show, okay? The African History Network show, my Facebook Live broadcast. I reported on this, all right? Let's see. Let me get rid of one of these little dumbass trolls here. All right. All right, get the hell out of here with that nonsense. All right, deaths now outnumber births among white people in more than half the states in the country, demographers have found, signaling what could be a faster than expected transition to a future in which whites are no longer a majority of the American population. This is the report that came out from the Census Bureau in June of 2018. The Census Bureau has projected that whites could drop below 50% of the population around 2045, but since then it's suspected by 2043. A relatively slow-moving change that has been years in the making, but a new 26 states. But a new report this week found that whites are dying faster than they are being born in 26 states, up from 17 states just 2 years earlier. 26 states, that's what it is. And demographers say the shift might come even sooner. Okay, so this was, and they're seeing 2 years prior to that, 2018 was 2016, when 17 states out of 50, white people had a negative birth rate in that. So read this article. New York Times, MSN.com had an article about this as well. America's white population shrinks for the first time as nation ages. And the actual press release from the Census Bureau, this is the actual press release from the Census Bureau that came out in June 21st, 2018. Midwest home to most of the counties with decreases in median age. Midwest home to most of the counties with decreases in median age. And they talked about the increasing population of African Americans. In June of 2018, it was 47.4 million African Americans and 58.9 million Hispanics in this country. Okay, so we're looking at demographic changes. Okay, we're looking at demographic changes, and some white people, not all white people, some white people have a fear of this, and Trump is playing on this fear, on these fears. He's playing on them. He's bragging about the stock market, but only about 15% of the U.S. population is directly invested in the stock market. He's bragging about 3.2 percentage growth in the GDP, but for most Americans, they don't feel that. If you on MSNBC, they just did a town hall meeting in Pennsylvania, and you heard all these white people in Pennsylvania talking about the rising cost of health care, the attack on the Affordable Health Care Act, the attack on workers' rights, the attack on workers' rights. They can't make a decent living. Okay, so then you have the attack on workers' rights on union rights when it comes to collective bargaining. Okay, you have all these things taking place. These are real life issues. Yes, the Russian intervention and what's taking place with Trump is important, but these things, there's going to be probably four critical topics, issues in the 2020 election. Okay, it's going to be healthcare, it's going to be education, and it's going to be a living wage. Not just jobs, but a living wage. Okay, because you can have 2 part-time jobs and be fully employed. It ain't just jobs, it's a living wage. It's being able to have healthcare, being able to afford to use healthcare. It's going to be education, making college affordable. Is also going to be getting teachers the proper tools and the proper resources in schools. So you have the talk about arming teachers in schools. We saw Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis just signed that into law, right? But teachers in Florida, but many of the teachers in Florida, if not most of them, did not want this law to pass, and they were saying, we don't want to be armed. What we want are proper supplies. We want proper funding for the schools. We want proper supplies for the schools. That's going to be a major issue in 2020. Okay, we have Jay, we have Leah, we have Djibouti, Ishmael, okay. He said, I'm African, not American. Now keep in mind, Djibouti, I'm all with being African, but the first Americans were Africans. Read the book by Dr. David Imhotep. The first Americans were Africans, documented evidence by Dr. David Imhotep, because African people have been in this land we call the United States of America going back at least 51,700 years. So the original Americans were African people. And if you go to the 1828 Noah Webster Dictionary, it's online, the 1828 Noah Webster Dictionary, and look up the word American, you'll see that it talks about American originally referred to the Aboriginal or copper-colored races that were found in the Americas by Europeans. Okay, so it's telling you that the original Americans were not, it's telling you that the original Americans were not Europeans. African people are the original Americans. Now, when we say, a lot of people say, like Malcolm X said, you know, I'm not an American, I'm a victim of America. He's talking about the American government. He's talking about what the American government, the history of what the American government has done to African people. But we have to understand unequivocally, this was our land stolen from us. This was our land stolen from us. I just did, what I'm gonna do, I gotta put the presentation on digital download. So those that give a donation of $10 or more, I'm gonna send you the digital download. We'll send it to you this weekend. Well, maybe tonight, I'll get the upload it, whenever. In about a day or so, I'll send you the digital download of the presentation I did dealing with ancient Africans in America. Ancient Africans in America before Columbus and before slavery, from Kemet to Wakanda. Okay, I did that at the pre-Mother's Day African Ball on May 11th, Saturday, May 11th. I did that presentation Saturday, May 11th, 2019. I recorded it. The pre-Mother's Day African Ball. I was the keynote speaker there. And Queen Mother Oshandara organized that event in Detroit. And she wanted me to speak on that topic. And I dealt with a lot of archaeological studies in the last few years that document an African presence in this country and in South America, going back tens of thousands of years ago, before Native Americans come into existence, before the Clovis culture that was found in New Mexico that dates back about 15,000 years ago, and said to be the oldest evidence of like really Homo sapiens in North America. Okay, but there's evidence of Africans going back at least 51,700 years ago in South Carolina, and in South America going back at least 56,000 years ago. These were the Khoisan. The Khoisan have the oldest DNA on the planet. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. The Khoisan, the short statured people, go all around the world. They have the oldest DNA, okay? So we have to understand this. All right, now I talked to Dr. David Imhotep about a week or so ago. And his new book comes out in July 2019. It's called The First Americans Were Africans Revisited. The First Americans Were Africans Revisited. It has about 200 additional pages because this book is out of print. Unless you can find it like at a bookstore, African-American owned bookstore, something like that. This book is out of print, okay? But his new book comes out July 2019. It's gonna blow you away. All right, if you like this type of information, be sure to register for the online courses that I teach. We have them in the bundle pack. They're all on demand. Watch at your own pace. Watch from around the world. They're all in the bundle pack on sale, $40, regularly $130. It includes the 14-hour, 7-session online course that I teach called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, okay? That's a 14-hour, 7-session online course where I deal with thousands of years of history, and I deal with what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. I deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, and how the Moors bring Europe out of the Dark Ages, and how that's all gonna come, how that all kicks us in the behind, okay? Paula Epps, how you doing, Paula? We've got Djibouti, Ishmael, we have Phyllis, through the people watching. Share this broadcast on your Facebook page, invite your friends to tune in also, okay? All right, and then African-American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with us. We promote you in our Facebook Live broadcast, on YouTube, and in our audio podcast that are on 8 different podcast platforms. We're on iTunes, Castbox, FM Player, TuneIn, Blog Talk Radio. Okay, let's go back to the study from Rutgers University, because the Rutgers got me on the New York Times and the myth of the Negro cocaine fiend, okay, which is history that a lot of people don't understand. Let's go back to this Rutgers University study, because this is extremely important. And this is an article from AtlantaBlackStar.com. Rutgers study suggests media's negative portrayals of Black men contribute to police violence. Okay, so so researchers also pay particular attention to how the newspapers use Officer Darren Wilson's account of the shooting to describe Michael Brown, as well as the verbiage used to depict Michael Brown and Officer Darren Wilson's socioeconomic status. For instance, one account, citing Officer Darren Wilson painted Michael Brown as, quote unquote, a monster, and noted how the officer compared himself holding on to Michael Brown's arms to, quote, a 5-year-old trying to hold on to Hulk Hogan, end quote, even though Michael Brown and Officer Darren Wilson were about the same height. Michael Brown was heavier, but they were about the same height. And from that, I started talking about the myth of the Negro cocaine fiend and how that helped shape drug laws. Okay. Now, on another occasion, Michael Brown's neighborhood was depicted as, quote, trappings of a working class haven, end quote, with an, quote, edge of frustration and anger, end quote. While Officer Darren Wilson was painted as someone who had overcome a difficult childhood to make a life in a middle-class suburban neighborhood with pretty, quote, brick ranch style homes and manicure lawns. Okay, but Michael Brown was on his way to college. He'd been accepted to college, and he graduated from high school. So on a lot of these depictions, they're depicting their socioeconomic backgrounds, not as somebody who's made it out of this environment and graduated from high school and was college bound, but they depict Michael Brown as coming from trappings of a working class haven and with an edge of frustration and anger. That's his environment. But they depict Officer Darren Wilson as someone who had overcome a difficult childhood to make a life in a middle-class suburban neighborhood. Now, newspapers, quote, newspapers use sensational words to get hits, Professor Pamela Valera explained. Quote, however, the words they used depicted Michael Brown as a monster. Now, Professor Pamela Valera called the study's findings a snapshot, quote unquote, snapshot of a larger ongoing issue of police aggression toward Black men based on racist stereotypes and portrayals presented in the media. These are the same type of portrayals that we saw depicted by these students at the Memorial High School, and they call it Thug Day. This is the same thing, okay? And if that behavior, if that mentality is not corrected, they're gonna go on to become politicians, police officers, district attorneys, hiring managers at corporations, etc. Okay? This is why this is so dangerous. This is why we can't just sweep this underneath the rug. This is why negative corporate control hip hop has to be shut down. I'm not against positive hip hop, but this negative corporate control hip hop that promotes promiscuity and criminality, okay, that stuff is dangerous. That promotes the hypersexualization of African American women, okay, all that is very dangerous. All right, we have Janine, John Ray, just a few of the people watching. Okay. All right, so that's the article from dealing with Rutgers. Okay, and it goes on to say, and I have the actual article also from phys.org, phys.org, media portrayals of Black men contribute to police violence, study says. So the article goes on to conclude, and so does this one from phys.org. It says, this is just one snapshot of a larger ongoing problem of aggression toward Black men based on racial bias perpetuated by negative stereotypes in media, Pamela Valera said. She went on to say, quote, since the perceptions that Officer Darren Wilson held of Michael Brown are indicative of more general attitudes of Black men, it is vital that police be engaged in more intensive training to become aware of the stereotypes and implicit biases they hold, especially regarding the communities with which they have constant contact. And also, some officers should not be police officers. Some officers, not all of them, there are approximately 800,000 police officers in this country. There are about 18,500 police departments, okay? So I'm not talking about all of them. However, you have studies show somewhere between 2 to 4% of police officers are committing about 80% of the offenses. So I'm not talking about all of them, but also you need national standards on policing, because there are no national standards on policing. Now I heard, I think it was last year, that there's supposed to be, the FBI is supposed to put together a national database, a mandatory national data, it was a national database of those who die in police custody, something like that, okay? And, but you have to have national standards for policing, because there are none right now. And there has to be mandatory implicit bias training for police officers across the country and those federal agents as well. There has to be mandatory implicit bias training. Okay, so we'll post the link here to the article from AtlantaBlackStar.com dealing with Rutgers University. We'll post that as well. And there was another article from AtlantaBlackStar.com. This is from March 10th, 2018. Okay, earlier last year. Tall, dark, and dangerous. Tall, dark, and dangerous. Study finds tall Black men are in more danger of biased policing. Study finds tall Black men are in more danger of biased policing. And it talks about how entangled in controversy, you would think the infamous New York Police Department would have enough things to worry about, including a recent leaked file that revealed hundreds of officers had been allowed to remain on the job following a string of fireable offenses. According to a new report, however, research indicates that there's something else on the minds of some officers, namely a fear of tall African-American men. Now, published by the Proceedings of the National Academics, the Proceedings of the National Academies of Science, the study conducted by the University of North Carolina psychology professor Kurt Gray and social psychology graduate student Neil Hester concluded that being a tall Black man increases the likelihood of being profiled by white New York police officers. According to the study, quote, young Black men are stereotyped as threatening, which can have grave consequences for interactions with police. We show that these threat stereotypes are even greater for tall Black men who face greater discrimination from police officers and elicit stronger judgments of threat. We challenge the assumption that height is intrinsically good for men. White men may benefit from height, but Black men may not, end quote. The study also found that, quote, height seems beneficial for men in terms of salaries and success. However, past research on height examines only white men. Past research on height examines only white men. For black men, height may be more costly than beneficial, primarily signaling threat rather than competence. 3 studies revealed the downsides of height in black men, okay? And if perception is everything, simply being perceived as quote unquote more threatening can unfortunately have deadly consequences for those on the receiving end of such stereotypes, as seen in cases like Tamir Rice. Tamir Rice was 195 pounds and 12 years old, but he was perceived to be older than he actually was. The county prosecutor, said he was perceived to be 20 years old. He was 12, okay? And black boys in particular are at greater risk of facing dire consequences when placed in such scenarios. Okay, there's studies, and the American Psychological Association has one that I've read, done by Dr. Philippa Atiba Goff, that shows how black boys as young as 5 years old are deemed as being threatening, and they are looked at as being older and more threatening than they actually are. Black boys as young as 5 years old. We'll post a link here for that one also. And in that study talked about how black boys are perceived as being older, more dangerous, and are held accountable for their actions at an age when white boys are still looked at as being innocent. Let's see here. Let's pull that one up. This is on the American Psychological Association's website, apa.org. All right, let's see here. This is coming up. Okay, hold on. APA, bring this up. Yeah, black boys viewed older. Let's see, hold on. Black boys viewed as older, less innocent than whites, research finds. This is from the American Psychological Association. Okay, so you can read this also. We'll post this link here also. All right, and then I have a bunch of studies here. I'm not going to share all of them because it takes too much time, but this gets you started. But this is one of the reasons why the history of African Americans has to be taught in our schools properly, okay? And then also read the article from newrepublic.com. What are the children who grow up to become police officers learning in school? What are the children who grow up to become police officers learning in school? Lessons from Philadelphia's mandatory African American history classes. Because in Philadelphia, it's mandatory, in the high school at least, that students take African American history. All right, and then there was a really, really good study that I like to talk about a lot. I have a bunch of studies here, but we'll just talk about this last one. How news outlets help convince you that most criminals are black. How news outlets help convince you that most criminals are black. Now, this is from thinkprogress.org, and this is a study from, this is a study that was done by Media Matters for America. Media Matters for America. And what they did was they looked at local news broadcasts across the country. And they found that compared to the percentage of crimes that African Americans actually commit, they found that African Americans are grossly overrepresented on local news broadcasts about criminal activity. So they looked at news stations across the country. They gave the example of the city of New York City. In New York City alone, Black people make up 75% of criminals discussed on local news channels, local broadcasts, but they only make up 51% of people who are actually arrested. So what this study documents is how local news stations, and in New York they looked at WABC, WNBC, WCBS, and also I think they looked at the Fox affiliate as well. But what they're showing is how when people are bombarded with images of African Americans as criminals, it impacts the way they perceive African Americans. It impacts the policies that they want implemented, the people they elect, the laws they want implemented. This has wide-ranging impact, okay? And it's documenting how now the stories that are chosen by these local news broadcasts are chosen by the producers. So this also goes to what happens when the majority of producers are white. They're the ones choosing these stories. Okay, so when you start studying these, when you get into these studies, you find out this stuff is deep. How news outlets help convince you that most criminals are Black. And what they found was, let's see here, between August and December of 2014, WABC, WNBC, and WCBS overrepresented Black people in theft, assault, and murder coverage. On WABC, WNBC, and WCBS, respectfully, 82% on WABC, 73% on WNBC, 70% on WCBS, of all wrongdoers were African Americans. 82% of all wrongdoers on WABC, 73% on WNBC, and 70% of WCBS of all wrongdoers, the stories that they're showing of crimes, theft, assault, murder, the wrongdoers were African Americans. However, data from 2010 to 2013 shows that African Americans only account for 55% of murders, 49% of assaults, and 55% of thefts in the city of New York. So they're being overrepresented in the news coverage. So this is why we have to have a conversation with these local news stations. If they don't straighten up and fly right, then we need to have a conversation with their advertisers and say, wait a second, African Americans spend X amount of dollars with you each year. Now, this news station that you're advertising with, and you're paying the salaries of these producers, you're paying the salaries of the cameraman, you're paying the salaries of the newscasters, they are demonizing African Americans. Here's the evidence. So we have to understand the concept of redistributing the pain through targeted, sustained economic withdrawal. This is what Dr. King was talking about in his last speech, April 3rd, 1968. I've been to the mountaintop. When he said, he said, up until now, only the sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee have felt the pain. He said, we have to kind of find a way to redistribute the pain. And he told those people in the audience, he said, go out and tell your friends here in Memphis to boycott Coca-Cola and Wonder Bread and Siltest Milk and Hart's Bread for the discriminatory hiring practices. He said, he said in Memphis, Tennessee, he said you have 6 or 7 insurance companies. He said to put your money, he said, take out insurance policies with Black-owned insurance companies and as opposed to the white-owned insurance companies. He said, he told them to put their money in Tri-State Bank. Tri-State Bank was a Black-owned bank in Memphis, Tennessee. He talked about supporting Black institutions, okay? He said we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. This is what he said in his last speech. It's on YouTube. I've written an extensive article about it. I deal with this in a lot of my lectures. Dealing with Dr. King, he said we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. So what he's saying is when you have mass protests, you have to have targeted, sustained economic withdrawal of certain entities to go along with the mass protests to be able to push your agenda. This is what he's talking about. All right, so people, we need to really study his last speech and study Dr. King, study his entire life, because Dr. King is Dr. King wrote 5 books. You know, this is why I get upset with Dr. King Day celebrations, because I listen to the people talk. I can tell they never studied Dr. King, never read any of his books. His last book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, we wrote it in 1967. All right, so we have Kara, Paula, Janine. How's everybody doing? We'll post a link to these articles also. Okay. And so we have a lot of studies here documented this. And what happens is these negative stereotypes influence public policy. These negative stereotypes influence policy dealing with undocumented immigrants. When you demonize them as being criminals and things like this, it influences policy, whether you're talking about redeclaring the war on drugs, which former Attorney General Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III did May of 2017. This influences the way you handle policing, whether you're for consent decrees, which we saw an unprecedented amount being implemented under the Obama administration, and we saw an unprecedented amount of investigations into the patterns and practices of police departments to about 25, which yielded 14 or 15 consent decrees. And we see the Trump administration, which has done a total about face, and they're against investigations of police departments. They're against using consent decrees. Not only that, when Jeff Sessions became Attorney General, he tried to back out of the consent decrees with the Baltimore Police Department and the Chicago Police Department. In both police departments, the mayors, the police, they were saying, we want the consent decree. He tried to back out of them because this administration is taking a soft hand with police, a soft hand dealing with police brutality. We saw that Press Secretary, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, when Stephon Clark was killed in Sacramento. April Ryan of American Urban Radio, and she's on CNN also, African-American journalist April Ryan asked a question about something to the effect, what does Trump think about these killings of unarmed African-Americans, okay? And Sarah Huckabee Sanders said that that Donald Trump feels that it's a moral issue, it's dealing with morality. Right? Well, you're not saying it's a moral issue when you have white people dying of opioid addiction. You're not calling that a moral issue. I said, but Trump does not want to hold rogue police officers accountable. But keep in mind, he ran on the platform of law and order. Law and order means protect white people and lock up black people. That's a throwback to Richard Nixon in 1968. See, I do an entire presentation called African-American Resistance in the Era of Donald Trump, Voter Suppression, Reparations, and How Elections Have Consequences. When I show the similarities between Richard Nixon becoming president and Donald Trump, and what led to Richard Nixon having to resign from office August 9, 1974. And Nixon resigned from office as opposed to being put on trial. And I said January 2017, I think Donald Trump is going to be forced to resign from office, just as Richard Nixon resigned from office. And Richard Nixon was reelected in a landslide election in November 1973. And by August of 1974, he was forced to resign from office. Nixon was highly popular, more popular than Trump, and most Americans were against impeachment of Richard Nixon. And by August of 1974, because of the Watergate hearings, because people got to hear from White House counsel John Dean, because people got to hear from the witnesses, millions of Americans tuned in to the Watergate hearings. And then Nixon lost in the U.S. Supreme Court case of Nixon versus United States. He was forced to turn over the Nixon tapes, and he was forced to resign from office August 9, 1974. And I said January 2017, I think the same thing is going to happen to Trump. And I still say that because Trump does not want to be put on trial. After the witnesses testify, and this is why it's important for Americans to hear Mueller and hear Mueller speak for himself, hear Mueller explain, not hear Attorney General William Barr explain the Mueller report, hear the man himself, Mueller, hear from the witnesses, hear from Don McGahn. This is why the Trump administration is trying to block witnesses from talking, because they know if Americans hear this, it's going to go viral. When they heard Michael Cohen testify the second time, and Michael Cohen came clean and talked about how he lied, but he also provided corroborating documentation. He provided checks. He provided statements. He was coming with suitcases full of evidence and things like this. It changed how people felt about Michael Cohen. They knew he was lying, but look who he's working for. He's working for a criminal. He's working for a man that's told over 10,000 false and misleading statements. He was doing all this at the direction of Trump. So if you're going to say Michael Cohen's a liar, then what is Trump? All right, so check out these articles here. Check out the articles dealing with Thug Day as well. And African-American business owners, email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. We have a few new advertisers. Now, John L. Ray is Executive Vice President with MyEcon. MyEcon is a personal financial success company. It's African-American owned. Now, do you know what income shifting is? Okay, now income shifting allows you to take your money back from those who are taking it from you, and that's thousands of dollars a year. Plus, they can show you how to earn more. Income shifting also is a group of financial strategies that took John L. Ray from living from paycheck to paycheck to investing and not focusing on when the next check was coming. Visit his website, workingwithjohnray.com, workingwithjohnray.com. Also give him a call or text him, 248-929-2447, 248-929-2447. All right, and then also we have the Knick-Knack Company, So the Knick-Knack Company is for the very soul sophisticated, for the soul. The Knick-Knackery Company is a new online store that is launching soon. And out of a divine love for shoes, the Knick-Knackery Company was born. Their signature soles are artfully crafted. The signature shoes are artfully crafted in small owned factories to bring you both timeless and fashionable shoes, which have uncompromised construction, okay? So we'll post a link here, and you can visit their website to give them your email address so they'll let you know when they go live. launch.shopknickknacks.com/join us. launch.shopknickknacks.com/join us. Okay. And you can, that's Knickknacks, Knick. That's Knickknacks. Okay. All right, so African-American business owners, email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. Also, if you'd like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. This helps us keep doing the research, finance the research, stay on the air, pay the bills, pay for all this paper that it takes to print all this stuff up on, finance our Sunday night show, the African History Network show that I do every Sunday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On 9:10 a.m. the Superstation will be on, this Sunday show is going to be really good, so you don't want to miss that. We broadcast here on our Facebook fan page also, the African History Network, and also you can register for the online courses that I teach where we deal with thousands of years of history. We have the 10-course online bundle pack. It's all on demand, watch at your own pace. It includes the 14-hour, 7-session online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. That's a 14-hour, 7-session online course that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history. And it also includes great African women, the history, the mothers of civilization. It includes an online class I did dealing with the film Black Panther also. So it's a 10-course online bundle pack, watch from around the world. That's on sale for a limited time, only $40, regularly $130. All right, let's see here. Looking at some of your comments. All right. Okay, so we have Janine, Paula, Kara. There's a few of the people watching. Okay, everybody, share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Be sure to follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Follow us on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. Turn on the notifications so you'll know when we go live as well. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about. What you've been taught about yourself, what you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.